Hi, welcome to Alexander Technique London. My name's Adrian, and today we're going to look at the classic Alexander Technique procedure, the whispered R. Now, it's a procedure I think often gets overlooked. I think I've been guilty of overlooking it both as a student myself and as a teacher. And I think the reason it gets overlooked is because technically it's a vocal procedure, an exploration of the vocal mechanisms. And if that's not an area of interest for you, well, you might naturally just think, I'll let that one go. And I think this is a shame because I think there are other benefits to the whispered R beyond just vocalization. And that's why I want to do this video, to share those other benefits with you and obviously to explain how to do the whispered R. So let's start with the benefits. So, if you've seen one of my other videos on breathing, some of these things apply to this as well, because actually those breathing exercises and procedures I did before are effectively a cut down and lazy, if you like, whispered R, where we're just dealing with the out breath. And I did cull that idea of long out breaths from the whispered R, and I just removed the vocal aspects of it, and the speaking mechanisms, the jaw and the throat. But you still get the benefit of that with the whispered R. And what are those benefits? Well, as you do a long out breath, it brings the rib cage in. And then as you release, it will ping back out. So what you're doing is you're generating more freedom of movement in the rib cage. It's like a reset for the breathing mechanism for the rib cage, get it moving more freely. And with long out breaths, something that happens is the diaphragm can release back up more freely. The diaphragm isn't used on a long out breath or on the out breath, unless you're doing controlled out breath. But if you're just letting it all go, it will just release back up. And that's useful because it's another muscle, the diaphragm, that can just stay a bit pulled. So it's like people are trying to breathe on top of a slightly previously held breath. So the long out breath releases that. So it's effectively like a reset button for your breathing mechanisms. But on top of that, we get other advantages. So we can get to release tension in the throat and in the jaw. And I think from an observation point, it's good to know whether we're interfering with our functioning. It's all you can really know whether you're getting in the way. It's not about doing things correctly, but freely. And in order to be able to do something freely, you have to know whether you're interfering or not. And the main one we start with is the head-neck relationship, for good reason. Because, if that's off, it affects everything below it. And it's a good port of call to start there. But it's useful to notice interferences in other areas, such as in the breathing or within the voice. And I certainly used to find, it probably still happens to a degree still, but less than it used to, that whenever I was stressed, my voice would go up an octave. And would be more constricted and tight. And that doesn't happen to me so much now because I'm more aware of it, because I can hear it's gone up. And then I kind of associate that. I'll go, oh yeah, I can feel it in my throat, and I can start looking at releasing that. So it's very useful, I think, for finding that bit of emotional tension that always seems to go to the throat. We get very tight in here. So you can release that. Obviously, emotional tension we can hold over the whole organism, but it's nice to be able to make a few little pinpoints, go, oh yeah, I see it here, and have something to do about it. The other thing it does is it releases the jaw joint. Again, it's a stress response, clenching the jaw. I know many people are teeth grinders in their sleep, and by doing the whispered R, because we're opening the mouth, we release some of the tension within the jaw joint. So what we have is a thing called antagonistic pairs of muscles. So that in order for one set of muscles to tighten, an opposing set must release or nothing will move. So a classic example is the bicep and the tricep. If I want to move my arm like that and tighten this bicep to move it this way, this tricep has to release. Otherwise your arm's just stuck there between the two, fighting. And the jaw's the same. So as we open here, these clenching muscles get a chance to release. Now, of course, it depends a bit on how wide you open your mouth to how effective that is and how long you open your mouth for. It can be a useful thing kind of as a part of doing your whispered art. Explore just the movement of the jaw as well to begin with. So that's what we're going to do now. Let's have a look at the way the jaw moves, because it doesn't move in the way most people think it does. So I'm just going to move like this, make an example. So what it doesn't do, it's not like a door joint hinge. It doesn't just do that. That's not what it does. It does something more akin to this. It's got this forward and down motion, this lower jaw and this joint, which is through here. So through here, coincidentally, just happens to be the axis of the top of your spine, where your skull meets the top of your spine. But you can also, by jamming your finger in there, lightly, I say jamming, but take that with a pinch of salt. If you feel through there, you can actually feel the back of the jaw joint. And as you open your jaw, you should be able to feel that movement against your fingers of forward and down. Now, I have experience with a few people, with a few clients, when I put my fingers in here, that you can't sense it. And I guess we're all different. So if you can't feel that forward and down through your fingers there, don't worry about it. But if you can, it's just useful to be able to make that observation. That's what it does. So we have a directive from Alexander that before you do the whispered art, and this is another reason people don't like doing it, because it makes them feel self-conscious. You're supposed to think of something funny to smile about, a genuine twinkle in the eyes, which creates a nice lift in the face. But I think that can be psychologically difficult. If you can do it, great. But there is an alternative, which I got from one of my colleagues. In fact, while we were training together, Julie Sturman, who's a singer and really understood, she was a very technical singer, very new, all about voice production. And I think it maybe have been one of her singing teachers that suggested this to her. And I have found it very useful and I use it myself. Instead of thinking of something to smile about, think of or imagine smelling something really nice. Now, if you do happen to have something really nice to smell, like baking bread or cookie dough or something, or nice Chardonnay or something, I don't know. We do a very natural thing. As we savor it, we get a nice lifting of the face, we get a nice soft palate, and a sense of spaciousness within the nose and the nasal cavities. And that's a very nice way to get around this feeling like, really, I've got to smile. If you can do the smile, smile. The only thing I could ever think of anything to smile about is how silly I look doing this procedure. And I think, again, that's why people don't like doing it. And I feel a bit self-conscious. So yeah, you're not obliged to do this in public. It's okay. No one has to see. So what we want is to keep the tongue behind our lower teeth, and you let the jaw go forward and down. Now, there's an aspect to this where it would be worth exploring this lying down in constructive rest. That is, lying down on your back, feet flat on the ground, knees up, with your head resting on the book. And the reason that's useful is there's an interplay between the jaw and the back of the neck. And we don't want to basically tighten our neck muscles unduly because we've opened our jaw. So to begin with, I would recommend just being quite casual about opening your jaw. Don't open it too wide. Because if you open it too wide, you might find, and I'm going to exaggerate, you start pulling like that. I don't do that anymore because I've kind of trained it out myself, particularly while resting in constructive rest, my head in a book. Because when your head's on a book, you can feel this pressure change on the back of your neck, on the back of your head, between your head and the book. So if you can feel that interplay happening, just don't go any wider and just rest there. And it can be useful to just rest with your jaw open like that for a while to help release these clenching muscles. So if you feel comfortable that you can just open your jaw to a safe place without pulling on your neck, then what you want to do is whisper out a warm column of air, such that, and I say warm because you want a sense of it being, well, it will be warm anyway because it's just coming out of your lungs, but a sense of it being expansive and I don't know how well these words work, but you want a sense of it being round, soft, velvety, smooth. I don't know how good these descriptive words are, but you get the idea, and you're listening to the sound and making a value judgment. That could it be smoother, rounder, softer, more open in the throat? This is the minimum amount of use you can use in the throat to at least generate some turbulence in the air so you can hear a whisper, but not so much as to actually vocalize, through the vocal cords. You can actually do this as a silent R. Start doing it silently, so there's no sound coming out, and then, because that requires no use of the throat, and then start doing a whisper so you can get a feel from nothing to the minimum, nothing to the minimum. And it's useful to be able to get used to using this area from a minimum point of view, so you're not overdoing it. So let me show you. So I'm going to let the jaw go forward and down, and then I'll whisper. I don't know if this microphone will pick up the whisper. We'll find out after the fact, I guess, but then you allow the jaw just to release back up, and you allow air to come back through the nose. I'm going to do one more, partly for demonstration, and partly because I noticed near the end of the breath there was a little something I could sense in my throat. I could hear it, I could slightly sense it. So jaw goes forward and down. That was better. I think it could be slightly more spacious. Yeah, it's good enough. Now, you want to allow the jaw to simply to release back up. You don't want the teeth to meet. Just you can allow the lips to close, but keep the jaw slightly open with the lips closed. You may find the lips stay slightly open, and that's fine, but it just rests back up. Now, this is where the idea of smelling something nice comes back in, actually, because as the air comes in, you really want a sense of savouring the quality of the air, because it really opens up the nasal passages, and you want a sense of letting the air go in and spread around all the sinuses and the nasal passages, and it helps to really soften the face. I found if I've got a cold, it helps to open that up a bit. If I'm feeling a bit bunged up, it can just sort of release a bit of pressure in there. And there's an interesting aspect to this. And if you've seen any of my other videos where I mention self-environment unity, I'm a big believer that we don't have personal functioning. Functioning is, in fact, a relationship. Just as your weight is a relationship, you have no personal weight. It's a relationship between how much there is of yourself, your mass, and the planet you're standing on, and therefore the acceleration it's pushing into you. If you're not familiar with these concepts, it might seem a bit strange to say that the Earth is actually accelerating up underneath you. I do recommend just looking up "Is Gravity a Force" on YouTube and having a little root around. But one of the byproducts of Einstein's general relativity is actually we have an upwards thrust coming up underneath us, and that's what we surf to create our posture, this upward thrust. And we have other aspects to our environment and that are equally important to our functioning, and air pressure being an obvious one here. Now we're talking about breathing and whispered R's. And what we don't do when we breathe in is we don't technically suck the air in a way that you normally think. So what happens is when we breathe in, the rib cage moves kind of like a bucket effect, but basically the torso creates expansion to create expansion within the lungs, and the diaphragm pulls down. So you get more room in your lungs. That's all you do. You move. Your torso moves. And it moves in such a way to create more volume in the lungs. Well, then what happens? You've got the same amount of air in there, but more space. Therefore, there's lower air pressure than there is in the surrounding room. So you've got higher pressure here in the room, lower pressure here. You probably heard the phrase, Nature abhors a vacuum. And if you remember your school physics, gases like to equalize the pressure from, so if there's a pressure differential between high to low, it will try to equalize out. And that's what will happen. So the higher pressure of the room around you, that's going to push its way in. So you don't suck it in like a grabby kind of way. You're actually creating space and inviting that air to come in. And as it pushes its way in, you let it waft around all your olfactory senses, feel spacious in there, and just wait, let it do that. And it helps to soften all this area as well. And I find that people who maybe have a bit of air hunger get very, sort of, want a better word, grabby with the air, sniffing at it. Movement of your torso is what you want. That is what generates movement of the air, by letting it push its way in during an in-breath. On an out-breath, you give it back again. So there's a relationship between you and this environment. You create space, it gives you air, and then you give it back again. And that just allows you to be a little more what we call non-doing in the Alexander technique. You're allowing the air to come back in, have this relationship of allowing. And yeah, so you just wait and let the air come in, and when you get to the top of the in-breath, you can then allow the jaw to go forward and down again, and do another whisper. And, you don't have to do it for too long. 3 to 5 is often enough. You get a feel for it. If you do it for longer, if you feel like doing it for longer, your nervous system will down-regulate more. Your parasympathetic nervous system will kick in more. So a very nice thing to do just to relax you. If you're going to do long out breaths, as I've suggested before in other videos to relax yourself, why not add in the whispered R as well? And with that being the case, because I recommend starting long out breaths when you first lie down to do constructive rest, in part to scratch that itch of feeling like you should be doing something. And that's psychology. If you start with long out breaths, or why not whispered R's, then you scratch that itch, but you're also down-regulating yourself. So you're getting yourself into the mental space, the nervous system quality you want from a good constructive rest. And while you're lying down doing it, yes, you can explore the range of motion of your jaw before you start feeling yourself pull on your neck muscles. So it's not particularly complicated. It's not intended to be. None of the Alexander procedures or the Alexander technique itself is intended to be complicated. They're just opportunities to make observations about ourselves. I mean, we're complicated enough as human beings. We don't want a complicated system to observe that through. It just wouldn't be very helpful or useful. So give it a go, see what you think, see if you find that even if you're not interested in the vocal aspects of it, you just find yourself feeling a little more relaxed, for want of a better word, a little more open in the throat, a little softer in the face, a little more quieter within the nervous system. All right, so give that a go, and I shall see you next time. Okay, take care. Bye.